What does it mean to create from rest? That's the question that my friend Erin and I are exploring this year from two very different lenses. For Erin, she's looking at it from what it means to take everything off the table and have a complete sabbatical, a year of complete rest. And for me, I'm looking at it from the angle of scaling without striving. We have committed to coming together once a month and holding one another accountable and also discussing what it is that we're learning through this experience and hoping that by sharing that with you, that you can start asking yourself what it means to create from rest for you. And so Erin and I are jumping on today to have this conversation. So Erin, thank you for being here with me.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me.
and so we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna explain a couple things though before we kind of get into the conversation. We released an episode. We actually released two episodes back in January, a part one and part two, where part one you explained your story, and part two I explained my story. And we had said, oh, we're gonna release these once a month. And we came together and we recorded another episode. And we had a really lovely conversation, but I never released that episode. And we're gonna explain a little bit why and how that plays a role in what I'm learning this year and kind of get into that a little bit. But we did record an episode and then we took a month off from recording, and that will be explained why in a second as well. But we are coming back together. So we're going to kind of do a recap of where we've been at the last couple of months since January, and just give you guys kind of an insight into what the first quarter of the year has. Can you believe it's been a quarter of the year already?
Oh my gosh, it's flying by.
I know. I'm like, how is it mid-April already? So we are, at the time of this recording, it is mid-April. Just to give you guys context where we're at in the year, it has been a quarter of the year. And I always feel like the quarter gives me a chance to kind of reset a little bit, kind of look back and say, okay, this was what I had intended this quarter to look like. This is where I'm at with meeting my yearly goals and all those things. But this year has been kind of a little different. But before we get into what I have kind of gone through the last couple months, why don't we just kind of recap where you've been at, Erin, and get an idea of what life has looked like for you to not do anything, which that's like a misnomer. You have done things. It's just a little looks different than what you had been doing before.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of the beauty of it is doing some things that I would have had to say no to and have been able to say yes to. But okay, a lot has happened since January. I feel like in February, even beginning of March, was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting the Sabbath year to be like, oh, just restful and peaceful. And no, God was like, there is a project and it's you. You're the project. And so it was a lot of reading God's word and seeing some really, really ugly places in my heart um, that are easy to dismiss when you're busy, right? They're easy to just glance over and like, it's fine, it's fine. There's big external sins that everyone can see that obviously like we need to deal with because people see those. But then there's small internal sins that I think are more dangerous because like when Jesus talks about in the Bible, it's harder for a camel to walk through the eye of a needle than a rich person to get into the kingdom of God. It's almost like the closer you are on your own with your striving or your achieving or whatever, the harder it is for you to finally humble yourself and submit and see the places where you really do need to change and fix things. And I feel like God just flipped on the light and there were rats everywhere. It was just, it was us.
Oh, that's the image.
Yes. And so most of, yeah, February, early March, it was just like ugly. It was so ugly and broken. And I was a mess. And God was just showing me all these things that I didn't want to see. And they were way too true. And the writing, that no one will ever see. Thank you, Jesus, that came out of that. Like cringy writing. Like, I don't even want to put this on paper because once I put it into real words, then it means it really is true about myself. But there's really no other way to face this than to admit this is true and it needs to change. It was rough.
Do you mind sharing what some of that was? Just
Pride.
surface level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most of it is pride issues. Um, he likes to point out things like, "You're the Pharisee in this story about the Pharisees that clean the outside of the cup, and then the inside of the cup is all grody."
Mm.
Or, "You are the older brother who is more worried about the rules and regulations than celebrating the prodigal son being home," right?
Yeah.
Um, and these are things we don't wanna be.
Mm-mm.
Um It's just stuff that you don't wanna have to admit.
Mhm.
Ego issues and, just all the things that come with achieving and striving, trying to earn God's grace. Like we could ever do that. But
Right.
part of me is like, I feel like it would be easier in my personality to try to earn God's grace than to just accept it. Why is
Mhm.
that? Um, just receive it and let it be a gift.
Mhm.
So, learning lots of things that I know in my head are true. I've read in the Bible 1,000 times. I've taught 1,000 times. But God being like, okay, but we really need to
Yeah.
change your heart. Like, some things
Mhm.
need to change. So, it's been awful and great and healing. And at the same time, just so humbling that God loves me too much to leave me in that place and to let me live that way. Um, and being grateful for his um, yeah, conviction.
Yeah. I think it's hard too because, a lot of what you're talking about, like, pride and ego and achieving and striving. It's hard not to have those things when you're running a business or you're creating
Mhm,
content or you have a project that you're facilitating. It's kinda like I always say, I struggle with my weight and, eating like, emotional eating, and it's like I feel like it's one of the harder things because you have to eat to live, right? Like, you can't just completely remove it from your life, and so there's this walking the "it's enough," not allowing it to become an idol, right? But
right.
you still need it. And so a lot of the things that you have mentioned to me, just numbers or the sense of like, oh, I did this thing and uh you kinda have to check numbers, you kinda have to check, you know, profit margins, you have to see, like, "I have this deadline, I need to hit it," like, there's these things that are just naturally a part of business, and they're, like, an integral part of business. It's an integral part of being a writer or a content creator, and so it's necessary, but you can't let it become an idol, you can't let it become the thing that you trust more than what God's asking of you or God's provision or God's faithfulness, and so I think it's a hard one to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, eventually I am gonna have to go back to, all the things, creating content and publishing in the world and all of that, and I'm going to be ready for it and looking forward to it when it's that time, but I do feel like I did need and will need the full year to work out these internal issues so that I can step into that from a correct perspective, with correct motivations, and really guarding my heart in a way that makes it not only valuable to my audience, but also sustainable for me in my walk with Christ,
Mhm.
which is important.
Do you
And
ever
now,
just wanna just burn it all down?
yes, yes, there are those days. Like, can I just quit? Can I just like, I'm done?
Yeah, done.
Yeah, but
Yeah, this is too hard to struggle with. Why don't I
yeah,
just remove it completely? And I think there are probably some people who are like, "Well, if this is such a thing for you, then why are you continuing?" And I'm not talking about you particularly, I'm just
yeah,
talking about, like, creators in general. When they bring up these things, when writers bring up, like, it's really hard to not let social media numbers get to us, or
yeah,
it's really hard when we're getting rejection after rejection. They're like, "Then why are you doing it? Like, stop complaining. If
yeah,
this is something you wanna do, then why are you complaining?" And I think I just wanna say for others out there who are content creators and writers who are just struggling with this, like, it's a valid thing to struggle with. Like, you are not alone. I think the majority of us struggle. If you don't struggle with the whole, like, number thing or, like, rejection or just the whole what comes along with being a writer and a content creator, I think that you are probably the anomaly, not
yeah,
the rule. If you don't struggle with that. For you, if you would, speak to this, like, why do you keep going? Like, you just talked about, I'm going to do the hard work, the heart work now so that I'm ready in a year. So what's still motivating you that a year from now you're going to go back into everything?
Yeah. So this past month, um, I have felt a definite shift in just seeing God's grace as a gift,
Mm,
and the idea of resting in His peace. And even, we've all heard the verse, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. For my burden is easy, my yoke is light. And, we know all this, but a yoke and a burden don't sound easy and light. And it sounds like something we really do have to like muscle up and carry. But just really seeing that be true of like, you don't have to do anything to earn my love. Like, my love
mhm,
is just there. My grace is sufficient. Um, but at the same time, he's a master with servants that he gives talents to, and he expects us to steward those well,
mm,
right? Um, and so I think just being able to receive his grace in the last month or so, and really truly rest in peace and be like, okay, I I don't have to make it happen. Um, but there is this co-creation process with God that we do still need to participate in. And what does that look like moving forward? And part of what he's shown me is that um, being an achiever does not disqualify you from building God's kingdom. I think a lot of times as Christians, we think we can't be an achiever and, we can't do both. It's like you
mhm.
either have to take up your cross, give up everything and follow Christ,
Yeah.
or try to build and create something. And God is saying, no, you can build and create something for me. And God has given me this achieving personality for a reason. Like, He created me this way. So it isn't a bad thing, but it does get twisted by sin. Um, and our perspective does shift if we're not focused on Christ. So I really think the last month, He's just been encouraging me by letting me know, like, this achieving part of you that drives you forward always, that never turns off, is not a bad thing. And I can use it for my kingdom, but only if you're letting me use it for my kingdom and not
Mm,
to create your own kingdom. Um, so that is what is exciting about what's coming up in the next year. I have
yeah.
things coming up now that
Yeah.
he has shown me are like just totally not me, because I wasn't doing anything for these things. That obviously I'm taking a break. Um, but I had signed with an agent last year, finished the book proposal this past December, and then Sabbath year. Okay, God, whatever. And this is my first round with agents and proposals and all this stuff. So I don't know how long things take. And in January, like second week of January, she says, I'm going to start pitching your proposal. Oh, okay. Well, whoops. What, what do I do there? I do nothing, right? Because I'm Sabbathing. And so she pitched it, and I'm thinking this is going to take forever. I don't know how long this takes. Um, in February, maybe February, we heard back from a publisher who was interested, but they wanted me to change the book from a devotional to a trade book. And that would require me rewriting it this year. And so I said, no, that's not going to happen. Um, I
Yeah.
still didn't explain the whole Sabbath year thing, but it wasn't the direction I wanted the book to go anyway.
Right.
Um, so it wasn't really a no because it was a Sabbath year, but I don't know that I would have taken the time to really know that, except for the fact that it was a Sabbath year, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense.
No, it does
Um,
completely. Like, you might have just said, "Okay, yeah, I can make this happen. I
yeah,
can
I
write
can do
this
it.
book." Yeah,
Achievers, we say yes, yes, I
right.
can do that.
Yeah.
I can do anything, you know?
Mhm.
That's just how it's, sure, I could do that. Um, and so I said no and kind of thought, okay, well, that's the end of that, and then heard in maybe March that a different publisher was interested, and they made an offer, and we negotiated the offer, and they've sent the contract, and now we're negotiating the contract. So hopefully, I don't know how long any of these things take, but we'll be signing soon. And even that, I was a little nervous because it was like, okay, they're probably going to want to put it out spring of 2025, and I don't want to come right out of the Sabbath year with this big launch,
Mhm.
um, and when I got the contract, it was spring of 2026. And I
That's
was at first
awesome.
like, "Oh my gosh, this is ridiculously long." It's like a 25-month runway to get this book out.
Yeah.
One that I've already published, it's already written, like, the whole thing to get that written. It's it's a finished book, but it's gonna take us 26 months to get it out into the world. Um, but then I thought, "God, this is perfect because I won't need to do any edits this year."
Mhm.
Like, I will need to do nothing other than sign the paper and hit send on the manuscript that's already done.
Mhm.
Um And that gives me a whole year to grow platform, do all the things that you're supposed to do to get ready for the book launch,
Yeah.
and I'm not coming right out of this Sabbath year feeling just this stress to push,
Mhm.
push, push. Um, and God is just showing me like, I've got this. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
need you to orchestrate any of this. I can work and I can plan and I can handle the things. You don't have to knock doors down. Um, Even though that's
Yeah.
my personality is like making it happen, right?
Right.
Um, and I can take care of you and I can do these things and you can just be, right? You can just be
You can just
faithful
be
and
along
be
for the ride.
obedient.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can just do what I tell you to do and then don't worry about the rest. Let me handle the rest. And
Mhm.
so, anyway, that's where I am. A lot is happening that I'm doing nothing for. Uh, we'll see. We'll see where things go. But I am definitely enjoying this year of rest. I wasn't enjoying it a month ago. A month ago
Yeah.
was rough. I was like, ugh,
Yeah.
but I'm enjoying it now.
So you wrapped up in February, the 28-day devotion challenge,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of work, but you had
Mhm.
already committed to that before the Sabbath year. So that was kind of like your last final thing.
Yeah.
It makes sense then that March would be kind of rough because you're coming off like doing this project and then now you really truly have nothing. And
Yeah.
so it really was probably the first month that you had where it was revealing to you.
Yeah.
So your books are all like set to cost.
Right.
Are you putting out your email newsletter?
So I am doing one when I feel like it.
Okay.
Before it was like every Tuesday morning, you will get your
Yeah.
email at 5:45. And they were
Yeah.
scheduled out. They have tended to be every other week ish.
Hmm.
Today would have been the every other week, but I didn't send one out today. It's like if God shows me something that's for me and I write it
Yeah.
for me and then I want to share it, that's when I send out an email.
Okay.
And only because I love I love those emails. I love
I
writing
know.
them and I love just being in the mindset of looking for where God's working around me. I feel like it's a good habit to be in, whether I
Mhm.
share it or not. So that's
Yeah.
the emails are kind of they're whatever.
That makes sense. So, and then you have been involved in other things that are non-writing things. You mentioned
Yeah.
you had more time. Do you want to share any of those with us?
Yeah. I just finished up working with my women's retreat for my church, which is kind of a lot of volunteering. And so in the past, I would have been like, no, I can't do that because I've got a book coming out in May and da da da. I've got my schedule set. And so I was able to really volunteer with them and serve on that team. And that was so much fun. Um, and even the 28-day challenge, knowing that I wasn't gonna keep the email list changed so much as I didn't promote how I shared about that. And that opened my eyes to a lot too, of even just that shift of like, okay, you're not trying to get anything out of this. And how does that change the way I share it and the words that I use to share it? And, anyway, I learned a lot from that too and really enjoyed it. Like, there was no pressure, right? Because I'm not
Mhm.
checking the numbers. I'm not trying to see like, "Oh, are we hitting these goals that I had set or whatever?" There were no goals. It was just, we're just gonna do it, and what happens, happens. And, anyway, I really enjoyed it a lot more than other projects where it's like, it feels like work. because it is
Mhm,
work.
mhm.
Um, so that was nice. Yeah.
So, going into the next month, what do you think will be taking up most of your time?
Oh,
Or
good question.
how are you approaching the next month?
Well, I'm not expecting much to happen in the next 4 months. May is
Okay.
always busy with just kids stuff, like field
Mhm.
trips and end of the year sports things and,
Right.
school stuff. They always have like lots of school stuff, and I have one that'll be going through her kindergarten graduation. All the school things will kind of take up May. And then June, July, and August, I usually take a break anyway because the kids are home and that's just
Mhm.
our time. So I don't wanna say what the next few months are gonna look like because so far, I have known nothing about this year. But I am hoping that the next few months are really just gonna be, enjoying time with the girls and just being mom,
Yeah.
going to the zoo and the park and the playground and the library and reading books and doing crafts and, really enjoying this time because, man, these years go by quick.
They
So,
do. They
yeah.
do. So I just have one last question for you. Okay. So you took off like producing, putting stuff out there. Are
Mhm.
you writing anything? Because like you have I'm looking at your kids' books in the back of your video. You have that series and you had like a release time frame for it.
Mhm.
Are you releasing any of them at the beginning of next year?
So book 4 was already written, and it was with the illustrator, so it was supposed to come out in May of this year. So it is done. My illustrator is enjoying a Sabbath year as well. It's nice for her too. Those illustrations were supposed to be done by the end of March, and, I mean, she's, like, maybe a third of the way through, and I'm like, take your time because I don't need them
Yeah.
until January of next year, so just take a break, work on it when you wanna work on it. So that one, hopefully, will come out in January because the writing part's done. When the illustrations come in, all I have to do is plop them into the formatted,
Hmm.
document. It's already formatted. So,
Yeah.
um and then I don't know about book 5. I have no idea. I have not worked on it. Every now and then I'll wake up in the middle of the night with a scene, and so I'll get up and write those scenes. Most of those have actually been for like book 8 though. They're like
Oh,
he's showing me more
interesting.
of the end. Yeah, so I just put the scene down and know that, eventually it'll work in somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm not like plotting anything out or sitting down to work on manuscripts or anything like that.
That's interesting. So you're creating, you're just not putting it all out there right now. It's creating without any expectations
Right. Or timelines, because I'm
or timelines.
always,
Yeah.
like, I need the draft done by here and this because
Yeah.
self-publishing, I work for myself and I keep myself busy, but
Yeah.
not this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that. I know it'll be interesting when we do this again next month. What where
Mhm.
you're finding yourself if you're still in a place of like, oh, I'm just enjoying this, or if you're like, I'm getting antsy. I wonder when that's gonna happen to you. When are you gonna start getting antsy? So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we can transition to
Yeah.
kind of where things have been at for me. Um, we'll see how well I do at this. This has been kind of a rough couple of years, and this is the first time I'm publicly talking about it, or not rough couple of years. It feels like it's been years. It's been a month and a half. Um, but so we actually suffered a miscarriage in the last couple months. So when Erin and I recorded our last we had gotten together to record our little whatever we call these conversations. I had just found out I was pregnant, and we were very excited. It's been 4 years since my last miscarriage. We have not been trying that entire time, but it's been a little bit that we are waiting, and so we were all very very excited and for this pregnancy. It was a little bit not a shock because we were hoping to get pregnant, but it was a little bit surprising of and in just that we had to recalibrate everything. We're like, oh wow, we had planned to go on our 15-year anniversary. We were going to do a trip in October, and we're like, well, now we're going to be having a baby instead. And so we were doing that kind of stuff. Oh, we need a bigger vehicle. Oh, we need this. And so much of February was spent kind of wrapping my brain about around, okay, what is this year actually going to look like now? And the things that I had um, anticipated and had planned for were suddenly now needing to be adjusted. January is wild too. We had an ice storm here, and my kids had the flu twice. And then I had morning sickness that I didn't quite realize at first. So, like, it was just a rough month. And so I got off to a rough start with my plans for the year. And so I had already pushed my novel back as far as like my date to get it to my editor. And lovely thing about self-publishing, you can do that kind of stuff. And so I had already asked her to put like to change the date, and had agreed to it. So I was still working towards that. Uh, but I think I said this in the first episode we did. I was planning to publish a total of 3 books, 2 novels, and then like a small poetry chapbook. Uh, and so I decided to move the 1 novel to next year once I realized I was pregnant. And decided if the poetry chapter book happens, it happens. If not, it doesn't. It's not a big deal. So I had planned to just release the one novel. So I started working on it. Um, and then in between being completely, I had the extreme morning sickness. It was really, really rough. Um, but at the beginning of March, I started bleeding. And so it was one of those like, let's wait and see. And so the miscarriage really like it began, I guess you can say, like the first weekend in March, and it was a 2.5 week situation. Um, it was kind of a roller coaster ride because there was some concerns about a molar pregnancy at one point. Thankfully, that was not the case. A molar pregnancy is where the pregnancy doesn't develop past the fertilized egg, but it becomes like tumors inside your uterus. And so thankfully that was not the case, but um, there was a roller coaster ride of all of that. And so I share all of that to explain that my last month has just been completely derailed. Like actually, honestly, my whole first quarter of the year has just been completely derailed. And it has really forced me to um, look at how I approach my goals. I'm very much like you, Erin. I'm very much an achiever. If I set my mind to it, it's going to happen. And um, I don't do it out of a place of wanting to earn God's um, grace or acceptance or love. I don't necessarily struggle with that aspect of it. But for me, it's this idea of like, I have this expectation for myself. And when I don't meet it, then I somehow have failed. And I don't think that God stops loving me or that he has any less love for me. I feel like I'm failing the things that he's tasked me with. Like he's given me this responsibility and I don't want to let him down because he's done so much for me. It's more of that. And so it's like, I don't want to let him down. I don't want to let myself down. I don't want to let the people around me down. Like, I just don't want to like disappoint people. And so there's a little bit of a people pleasing aspect to it, which is really weird because you would never say that about like I've said this. I was talking to my friend the other day about this, and I was like, you wouldn't necessarily say this about my personality that I'm a people pleaser. Um, but it shows up in a different form that most people do. All of that to say that what I think I have been having to face the last couple weeks, it's relatively new. So if I'm stumbling all over this, it's because I haven't really processed it out loud yet quite fully. But how self-dependent I am. Like, I don't like asking for help. I don't like not doing the things that I set out to do. And the reality of the situation is that I'm a one-person show over here. I'm running a podcast, I'm writing books, and I'm also running a business with my mom. And so, like, that business has been fine because I have a team. Um, Things continued on without me. Now I'm behind on some of the things I have to do for that business, but um, it didn't suffer because I had a team. My writing stuff all went on hiatus. I didn't post on socials. I didn't um, I didn't put any podcasts out. And so, it really opened up my eyes to the fact that, like, I hadn't set myself up very well, um, for my writing world to continue without me striving. And so that it's one of those areas where I'm just sitting with it and going, okay, well, what can I do? Because I can't put a lot of money towards this of hiring a team, or I have a couple of VAs, but I can't really utilize them. I say a couple of VAs because I have one from Homeschool Directive and I have another one for my podcast, but I don't have her do very many podcasts because I can't really afford it. I have her do some of the longer interview ones that just take up too much of my time. All of that to say, I'm not in a place where I can sustain through crises, I guess is what I'm saying. If I'm going to sustain, I have to strive and I have to push further past what is like healthy, really. And I think in the last month where I was faced with grief and tragedy and loss, I just didn't have it in me to do anymore. And so I just couldn't make it happen. And so I'm like, I don't even know what I want to say on social. Like, I don't want to say anything. Like, I really don't even want to talk to anybody. Um, if I had set things up a little bit differently, posts could have still gone out. But at the end of the day, like, it's hard. It's a hard road because I am seeing now the negative impact of not having posted. My posts aren't being seen by people. I post something and it's like crickets, like nobody's engaging. And so there are like legitimate ramifications from a business side of it that when you just completely fall off the face of the internet, um, it's really hard to crawl your way back from that. But at the same time, I have to honor the situation that I walked through and trust that God is bigger than the internet right now. He's bigger than the fact that I couldn't pull myself together to post things because in that time, all I could do is cry. And so, yeah, I guess I don't know if you have any questions to kind of guide the conversation from there, but
I don't know if it's a question as much as a challenge, um, because you're saying, like, you didn't have enough in you to sustain your, posting and whatever. But I feel like as authors, we so often push ourselves, right? Because we have to XYZ. We have to post certain number of times per week. We have to put out content. We have to create content. Like, it's this never-ending hamster wheel of shoulds,
mm,
you know? And I think what we really should do is let ourselves grieve,
mm,
to step back. And I feel like if you had kept posting, that is what would be unsustainable,
mm,
not the other way around. Does that make sense?
yes,
Because if you push through and keep posting whenever you're going through just grief, I mean, and loss and a really difficult, tragic season for you and your family, that is not healthy. And that would come back later, um, in just really negative ways, more negative than the algorithm not recognizing you.
mm-hmm,
I feel like we get so caught up in these numbers and shoulds and to-do lists and things to check off that we forget there are greater, more damaging things that we can do in our writing life. And that would be not taking the time to step away like you did.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I think you did exactly right. I think you
yeah,
did exactly right. And there wasn't something different that would have been better. Maybe in the world's standards, but not in eternal standards. And I don't think
yeah,
God is in heaven saying, "You let me down, Rachel, because you
exactly
didn't post
right.
on social media
Exactly.
while I was, you know,
Mm-hmm,
capturing your tears and holding them." I mean, that is not where his priorities are.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I don't think you let him down at all in
right.
choosing to step away and take that time to just recover and rest in him.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that I'm looking back, I'm like, "Okay, what could I have done differently?" And I'm like, "I guess I could have posted something saying that the podcast" really it's the podcast, right? Because it's supposed to be a weekly thing. Um, I haven't really created any kind of, like, regular posting schedule for stuff as far as, like, social media. But as far as the podcast, I could have posted something just saying that episodes were put on pause while I went through something, personal, and I feel I couldn't even bring myself to do that, which is interesting, and I think that says something about my personality more than anything, because I could have done that. I could have kept it really high level and just posted something just to give people, um, but what was really interesting is I think, uh and I think this is one of those, "Ah, okay, a mirror has been held up to me in this moment," and I I don't want to dismiss the fact that, like, I was grieving and that there's a lot there and I that was healthy to take that time. Um, but there was a moment where I'm like, "What's the point of doing any of this anymore?" Like, nobody cares that I didn't post. Nobody cares that an episode went out or it didn't go out. Like, nobody cares. And it was like this, like, I think the devil was using it a little bit to, like, stab at me in such a place of grief already, but it was like, nobody cares what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? And it's hard because you're like, well, it's really not about what anybody else cares or doesn't care about. It's about what does God ask of you, right? And if he's asking you to do these things, then the answer is to be obedient, not necessarily convince other people that it's valuable. And so it's kind of think about like I just had a thought about Noah, like what people must have been saying to him, like, this is stupid what you're doing. Right. And he
Yeah.
just ignored them and kept building the ark. Right. And so in that moment of like not posting and then nobody even realizing I hadn't posted or nobody really caring that the podcast hadn't put out a new episode, um, it just it hurt a little bit, but right now as I'm talking this out, this is a real time revelation right here, realizing that it doesn't matter if people care or not. You still have to be obedient to what God's asked you to do and trust that when it's time for people to care, He will prompt them to care, you know? So,
And I think too, we're assuming that because they aren't saying like, "Where's your podcast episode?" that they're, not
right.
enjoying it when they do come out. But people have lives and they're living their lives and they don't realize weeks have passed. I have an author I really enjoy reading, and she just came out with a new book, and I'm reading it right now. I think her last book came out 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm not sitting over here going like, "What have you been doing for the last 4 years? Like,
Right.
you should have published at least 4 other books in that time." No, I'm just like, "Oh, she's got a new book. I can't wait to read it." But if the last 5 years she had gone like, "Nobody's asking me where my next book is. They must not enjoy my works." That would make no sense, right? We're
Hmm.
just you just take your time, you write your thing, and when you're ready to share it, we're ready to have it.
Yeah.
And that thing will make a difference in the realm that God has called for it to make a difference in. So, I feel like people aren't, you know, um, not
Right. Well,
enjoying
people not really
that
think
it coming. They're just not ragging on you for the fact that your content didn't come.
right. That's so true. Oh my goodness. How much do we like worry about that? The pressure we
Yeah.
put on ourselves. It's so frustrating the industry sometimes that we work in. This like you need to have marketing, you need to have all this stuff. And it's so true because when you do put out the book, it needs to be there. The marketing aspect of it, the platform, you need to be able to reach people, right? I was listening to a podcast on the way home today, and they were talking about the old school, like putting flyers on things. It's funny. This podcast episode was literally about this YouTuber talking about how many subscribers he had lost over the last 14 years. It was something like 800,000 or something ridiculous, and he's like, he's got like 3 million followers, and his point was like, if you think about that number too long, the sheer amount of people that have essentially said, "No, I don't want what you've got," he's like, "If you let it sit too long, it can really hurt your soul." He's like, "But that's not who you're doing this for. You're doing it for the people who do subscribe, right?" And so they were just talking about how this world that we are working in as content creators, this world of social media, or subscribers or followers or email list subscribers, like these are all ways for us to advertise our products and services. And they are necessary because what you would do if you're a brick and mortar store is you would probably hang flyers, right? On people's doorknobs or putting them in the windshields or mailing them out. Like we don't have that same type of advertisement. Social media and all of that is our advertisement. And so it's necessary. But if we start like, if you were to put flyers on people's windshields or on their door handles or mailing them out, you would expect that a number of them would just throw those flyers away, right? But yet when we approach social media or email list or whatnot, we don't have that same kind of mindset. We take it so personally. And I think that what you just said there about people have lives. Like, they're not worrying about us constantly. They're not thinking about it, but it doesn't mean that they don't enjoy the things that we put out. And so I think that's a really valid and really important point that you've just made.
And I think there's a fine line too, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, like, there's this idea that, like, I can do nothing and God's gonna take care of it all, and, He's gonna do what He's gonna do, and I have no part in it. And then there's the other far extreme that's like, God has given me this talent, and I am going to, like, do everything I can, everything, everything, all the time. I'm gonna strive, strive, strive.
Mhm.
And, I obviously err on the side of the striving. But
Me too.
yes, we're over here. And I was talking to my dad and, about my personality. I was like, when did you first see this coming out in me? Like, was it something I always had? Was it something that developed? Just trying to kind of get to the bottom of it. And, we talked about that a bit. And he said, it's interesting because he is not the achiever type. He said, in my life, I have never really like set big goals, strived to achieve things, but I have always listened for God's voice and tried to obey and be faithful in being obedient to whatever he tells me to do. And he said, and I have just been blessed over and over. Like I look back and I don't even know how these pieces fell into place and why he has taken care of me the way he has and why he has blessed me the way that he has. And it's true. Like he's almost got the Midas touch. It's like everything my dad is a part of turns to gold. And I think that was just such a comfort for me walking away from that conversation, knowing not that, everything we do is going to be extremely successful, but that when we're just faithful and obedient, when we do not everything, but the one thing he's placed in front of us and not trying to, use it as part of a grand scheme or a large goal or a 10-year plan of whatever. Like, yeah, we've got all these things. But if we just do what he's put in front of us, he's going to take care of us.
Mhm.
He promises that, look at the beautiful flowers. If I'm clothing flowers like this, I've got you. Like, I've got
Right.
you covered. I care about the birds of the air. You're so much more precious to me than that. You don't have to strive to make it happen. But we do have to be faithful and obedient in taking whatever the next step is. And so I think finding that middle ground is really hard for us.
And then,
Um,
yeah.
but just kind of accepting that grace, but also stewardship and holding both equally at the same time. It's a tricky balancing act, but one that I think I think we can do. I think we can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. So I think for me, going forward, I think I'm trying to lean more into what you just said, that stewardship. Um, I think it's perfectly fine to have goals, and I think we should. I think we need to have kind of a path that we're, obviously consulting with the Lord on and asking for his wisdom in knowing what goals to put out there. But I do believe that that is important. Um, but to have them not so much with a closed fist, but more like an open palm, and also more of that stewardship principle rather than the achieving principle. Instead of saying, "Oh, I want to publish this book," and I'm not just talking about like changing your wording, but also like a heart posture of going from like, "Oh, I want to make sure this book gets published. I want to achieve that before." For me, I'm like, I want this novel out before I turn 40. Like, that's important to me. Um, but rather saying like, "Okay, Lord, this is a story that you have given me to share. I want to steward it well, and what does that mean? What from your perspective, what does that mean?" And so I want to make sure that I am doing that, but also I have realized in the last couple months, um, I do have a little bit of a tendency to when the going gets tough to go like, just melt and, like, hide. And so, I need I need to work on that a little bit too. I think the Lord has been revealing that to me, that just that level of discipline that when things are tough, not to just, "Well, I don't feel like it today. I don't want to." Sometimes you have to just put that aside, and so I do err a little bit too much on that, like, "I don't feel like it." And so there are things that I need to work on. So I'm prayerfully considering what does it mean to steward well without striving, um, being disciplined and not resorting to the easy, um, or putting things off because they feel hard. Uh, and I want to clarify there's something difference between like I'm exhausted because the day is exhausting versus like it's been an exhausting month because I'm grieving. Like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just like your daily, the kids were rough today, like things weren't coming together. And so it's just been a hard day. And now I don't want to go edit that podcast episode because I just would rather watch a movie, like that's the things that I have to work on. And so, but there's a difference between discipline and striving. And so, um, I need to identify that for myself. Um, I feel like I'm kind of hitting a little bit of a reset button, and asking, okay, what does stewardship look like in the next quarter rather than striving? I think that this loss and this grief and this tragedy has forced me to have to recalibrate. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I love that difference between discipline and striving because they're once again, all of these things are such a fine line. I feel like it's easy to tip the scale too far one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's a really good distinction to think about. And I just want to say that there are more things that we steward, and you know this, than
Hmm.
just our writing.
Yeah.
And I think that in the past month, you have stewarded your grief really well.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I appreciate that. I needed to hear that. Thank you. Well, I think we're going to end our conversation there. Um, I think sorry, you were making me cry.
I'm sorry.
Like,
It's nothing to do.
trying to, like, hold it in there for a second. Um, so alright, I'm going to wrap us up before you make me cry anymore, Erin, okay? So, thank you for sharing how God has been working on your life the last couple months. We will touch base again next month, and for those of you who are listening, if you're watching on YouTube, would you mind just putting a comment and letting us know, are you a striver? Are you an overachiever? Or are you more like Erin's dad who just kinda goes with the flow and just is trying to be obedient to the Lord? Would love to hear from you. And if you know somebody who could benefit from this conversation, would you please share it with them? Uh, I just I think it's a conversation we all need to be having as creators, especially Christian creators, about the differences between stewardship and striving, discipline and striving, and like you said, Aaron, not trying to earn God's grace by the things we're doing, but rather just enjoying the privilege of co-creating with Him. And so, if you wouldn't mind passing along the episode, I appreciate it. And we'll meet you back here next month when we continue the conversation about creating from rest. Talk to you later. Bye.